No zero. They broke you, and they made one mistake. They left you alive. Not physically. You are still breathing, still walking, still answering messages and making coffee and doing all the things that functioning people do. But something in you, the soft, trusting, available version of you, they killed that. Quietly, slowly. With 1,000 small moments of dismissal, manipulation, and indifference that accumulated over time into something that felt like your own disappearance. And they walked away satisfied, convinced they had finished you. They did not understand what they had actually done. There is a principle in physics called conservation of energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed. What was warmth becomes heat. What was light becomes force. What was open becomes something harder, quieter, and incomparably more powerful than what it was before. They did not destroy you, they transformed you, and they have no idea what they created. This is not a motivational speech. I am not here to tell you that pain makes you stronger in the way that people who have never really suffered say that to people who have. That sentence is cheap, and it is lazy, and it is usually spoken by someone who wants you to feel better quickly, so they do not have to sit with the discomfort of your reality. This is something different. This is a psychological examination of what actually happens inside a human being who has been broken at a deep level and survived it. What the neuroscience shows, what the history of the most formidable people who ever lived reveals, and what it means for who you are becoming right now, whether you can feel it yet or not. Let us start with what actually happened to you at the neurological level. When you experience sustained emotional pain, betrayal, manipulation, consistent devaluation from someone you trusted, your brain does not simply record the experience and file it away. It restructures. No zero. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for social cognition, emotional regulation, and strategic thinking, increases its activity. The amygdala, your threat detection center, becomes more finely calibrated, not hypervigilant in the way that trauma literature sometimes describes it, precisely calibrated, like a sensor that was factory set for average conditions and has been recalibrated for extreme ones. What this means practically is that the person who comes out of sustained pain is processing social information at a level that the person who has never been hurt cannot access. You read micro-expressions now that you would have missed before. You feel the shift in someone's energy before their words catch up to it. You know when someone is performing kindness versus actually being kind. You know when someone's interest in you is about you or about what you represent to them. You know these things not because you are paranoid, but because you have data. Thousands of hours of data encoded at a cellular level that your nervous system is now using to protect you in ways your conscious mind cannot fully articulate. The people who hurt you gave you this. They did not intend to, but they did. The Japanese have a concept called kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. The philosophy is not that the break never happened. The philosophy is that the break is part of the object's history, and that history, filled with gold, makes the object more beautiful and more valuable than an unbroken piece ever could be. But I want to go further than kintsugi, because kintsugi is about beauty. And what I am describing is not only beauty, it is capability. History's most formidable figures were not people who had easy lives. They were people who were broken early, broken deeply, and who emerged from that breaking with something that comfort and ease cannot produce. No zero. Marcus Aurelius lost children, fought endless wars, governed a crumbling empire, and wrote privately in his journals about the exhaustion and the grief, and yet produced the clearest psychological philosophy of power and equanimity that Western civilization has ever recorded. He did not write from ease, he wrote from survival. Epictetus was a slave, not metaphorically, literally enslaved. His master once broke his leg as a demonstration of power, and Epictetus looked up at him and said calmly that he had warned him the bone would break if he continued. He had already decided, at a level beneath fear, that his master could own his body but could not reach the part of him that mattered. That interior invulnerability, that specific quality of being unbreakable, not because you feel nothing but because you have already survived the worst. That is not a personality trait you are born with. It is forged in exactly the conditions you have been living through. Friedrich Nietzsche, whose philosophy is misquoted constantly by people who have never read him, wrote that what does not kill him makes him stronger. But the full context of what he meant is almost never discussed. He was not talking about physical resilience. He was talking about the specific psychological transformation that happens when a person encounters something that should have destroyed them, survives it, and then looks back at what they survived and realizes it has given them a vantage point that was simply not available before. The mountain climber who has fallen and survived knows the mountain differently from the one who has never fallen. The knowledge is not theoretical, it is bodily, it is permanent, it cannot be unlearned. Now let me tell you something about the specific transformation that is happening in you right now, something that most people in your life cannot see yet because it is not visible from the outside. Not yet. When you were broken by someone you trusted, there is a period that psychologists sometimes call the withdrawal phase and that ordinary people call by its accurate name, devastation. You are not yourself. You are not sure who yourself is anymore. The version of you that existed in the context of that relationship has been dismantled. And the self that remains is raw and disoriented and real in a way that the performed self never was. This phase feels like destruction. It is not. It is excavation. What is being excavated underneath the performance and the accommodation and the years of making yourself smaller to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be is the actual you. The you that existed before you learned to be useful, before you learned to be palatable, before you decided, somewhere early and somewhere deep, that your authentic self was not safe to bring into a relationship and needed to be managed and edited and offered in careful doses. That excavation is violent. It does not feel like freedom. It feels like loss. But what is being lost is the architecture of accommodation that was built on top of who you actually are. And as it comes down, as painful as that is, what is underneath is solid in a way the structure above it never was. Here is what the people who broke you do not know about what they have done. They removed your fear of losing them, and that is the most dangerous thing that can happen to a person who was previously afraid. Think about that carefully. Before the breaking, before the betrayal, before the manipulation became undeniable, you were operating under the weight of potential loss. What if they leave? What if they are disappointed? What if I say the wrong thing and the warmth disappears? That fear was managing you. It was making you careful and small and endlessly accommodating because the cost of losing the relationship felt greater than the cost of losing yourself. And then the worst happened. The thing you were afraid of, and you survived it. That is a psychological event of extraordinary significance. When the thing you feared most arrives and you survive it, the fear does not simply decrease. It transforms into something else entirely, into a kind of freedom that is indistinguishable, from the outside, from indifference. But from the inside, it is not indifference at all. It is clarity. You are no longer negotiating from scarcity. You are no longer making decisions from the fear of loss. You have already lost. You have already survived. And survival, real survival, not theoretical survival, changes the terms of every future negotiation you will ever have. The philosopher Seneca wrote, "Rehearse poverty, rehearse loss. Rehearse the worst possible outcome, not to invite it, but to remove its power over you." The person who has already encountered the worst is free in a way that the person who only fears it is not. You did not rehearse this. It happened to you. But the result is the same. You are living on the other side of the thing you were afraid of. And on the other side of fear is a version of yourself that moves differently, that speaks differently, that holds eye contact without needing anything from the person behind it. People will begin to notice this about you before you fully feel it yourself. There is a quality that the people who have survived deep pain develop that has no single name in English, but that shows up consistently in the descriptions of people who are perceived as powerful, mysterious, and unusually compelling. It is the quality of not needing the moment to go any particular way, of being fully present and completely unattached to outcome at the same time, of being able to receive whatever comes, warmth, coldness, approval, rejection, with the same quality of attention. This quality is irresistible to people who have never developed it. And because most people are in constant negotiation with reality, trying to make each moment confirm something they need to believe about themselves, trying to manage other people's perceptions, trying to create safety through performance. And the person who is simply present, without agenda, without need, without the barely concealed anxiety of requiring the moment to go right, that person stands out in any room with a presence that cannot be faked and cannot be learned from a book. It can only come from where you have been. Now let me tell you what you must not do with what you are becoming, because this is where the transformation can go wrong. And it goes wrong in a very specific way that I have watched happen to many people who survived the kind of pain you have survived. The walls. When you have been hurt at the level you have been hurt, when you have been genuinely broken by someone, you opened yourself to completely, the nervous system learns a lesson. And the lesson is, openness leads to suffering. And the conclusion the nervous system wants to draw from that lesson is, never open again. This conclusion feels like wisdom. It presents itself as strength. It calls itself being realistic about people, being selective, protecting your energy. And some of it is those things. But followed to its natural conclusion, taken to the extreme that pain sometimes pushes people toward it, becomes a different kind of prison. A prison you built yourself, with your own hands, to protect yourself from a threat that no longer exists in the form that hurt you. The goal of the transformation you are undergoing is not to become unreachable, it is to become unfeasible. There is a profound difference between those two things. Unreachable means no one gets in. The wall is total. The protection is complete. And yes, you will never be hurt in that specific way again. But you will also never be known, never be genuinely met by another person. No zeros. Never experience the specific quality of being fully seen by someone who is fully present, which is underneath all the philosophy and all the psychology, what every human being most deeply needs. Undeceivable means your perception is clear. Your instincts are trusted. Your discernment is sharp enough that you can open without being naive. You can be warm without being unguarded. You can love without surrendering your judgment. You can be present with someone without losing the thread of yourself inside the relationship. That is not the person you were before you were broken. The person you were before had warmth without discernment, had openness without self-trust, had love without the clear eyes that only come from having your love used against you and surviving it. You are not going back to who you were. You are becoming something that did not exist before. Rumi wrote something that I want you to sit with. He wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." But I want to offer a different translation of that image, one that is more accurate to where you actually are. The wound is not where the light enters from outside. The wound is where the light that was already inside you finally found a way out. You are not emptied by what happened to you. You are cleared. The accumulated performance, the carefully managed presentation, the exhausting architecture of who you needed to be for other people, that is what was removed. And what remains underneath it is not broken, it is incandescent. Carl Jung spent his life studying the shadow, the parts of a human being that are pushed into darkness because they were not accepted, not permitted, not safe to express. He argued that the path to genuine psychological power runs directly through the shadow, not around it, not above it, through it. The person who has met their own shadow, who has been forced to encounter the darkest, most vulnerable, most wounded parts of themselves, and has not been destroyed by the encounter, that person has access to a wholeness that the person who has only lived in the light simply does not possess. You have been in the shadow. Not by choice, but you have been there. And you know something now that cannot be taught in any other way. You know that you can survive yourself, that the depth of your own pain does not destroy you, that the version of you that exists at the bottom, stripped of performance, stripped of pretense, stripped of everything you used to think defined you, that version is real and solid and enough. That knowledge is the foundation of everything I described earlier, the unreadability, the presence, the freedom from fear. It all roots here in the fact that you have met yourself at your worst and neither destroyed nor abandoned yourself. That is what they created when they broke you. Someone who has nothing left to prove, someone who has already faced the thing they feared. Someone who carries the knowledge not as a theory, but as a lived, bodily, permanent fact that they can survive anything. They broke you. They have no idea what they made. And the world is about to find out.